for this evening. Is there any questions you got for me, sir? Because I've been interrogating you quite a bit, but I'm curious, is there any questions that you have
I
for
did
the
away.
illustrious
Every time
Gary?
something strange happens in Ukraine, I always kind of want to like see what you think of it because, like, especially like when Ukraine invaded the Kursk region of Russia and they started occupying Russian territory, I thought that was super interesting, and I was kind of curious what you thought about that. Um,
Like, to me,
Turns out that
another,
wall moves both ways. The
yeah,
Great Wall of Phil, you know.
the Great Wall of Phil. Well, in the end, when the final deal is cut, not
Yeah,
the Ukrainians aren't going to be holding any piece of Russian territory. Like, that's just we all know that. Um, when I talked to Dylan Burns,
yeah.
uh, that one was kind of an interesting one. Now you'll love this. My buddy Tony was giving me a hard time. It's like, so Phil, so you get on with war correspondent Dylan Burns, and then you just saunter in and tell him how Ukraine's gonna be. Fill the balls on you. No,
Yeah.
but no, in reality,
Well,
like,
and now who's the big? Like, it turns out Trump is the biggest
yeah,
Ukrainian
that's
pimp now. You
disappointing.
know.
Like, Trump's, like, just between you and me, we don't have to go through all of them, but it's been a disappointing month. Okay, it's been a
Yeah.
disappointing 30 days as a Trump supporter.
I've
Not
got to say, well, I guess it wouldn't be a big surprise, but like I'm starting to feel heartened again. You know that this stuff is getting out there, and now the reason Trump's doing it isn't the best, right? Like it has more to do with who fed his ego and who didn't. But at the end of the day, like there's a lot of like at one point Trump said that that if Putin does what he did, he said, "I will give Ukraine more than Biden ever thought about giving. Like I'm going to make Biden's transfers of weaponry look like nothing compared to that. If Putin doesn't do what I want, and of course Putin's not been doing what he wants, so it's happening. I think that was kind of interesting. And then, of course, I saw your reaction to Iran, and I can only imagine. I do remember you saying you felt the same way about Gaza. So, yeah, it sounds like he's going in a particular direction on that a lot of people didn't expect. That I didn't expect, actually,
like,
especially on Ukraine.
okay, the one where he's standing next to Netanyahu, goes, "We're gonna own the Gaza Strip. We're gonna turn it
Yeah,
into
yeah,
the Riviera of the Mediterranean,"
yeah,
and Netanyahu's looking over at him like, "Bro, what?
yeah,
Wait, what? Wait, what now?" Like, yeah, you can see, like, okay,
yeah,
in pro wrestling, that's called going into business for yourself. When you take
yeah,
the mic and then you just say what you want, regardless of what you were told to say. That
yeah.
was Trump going into business for himself. It's like, all right, we're just going to own the Gaza Strip. We're going to own it completely. What about that now? How
And
about
then he
that?
was shocked that the Palestinians didn't go for it. Like shocked.
Uh,
Like,
like, I think the point was just the shocked reaction. Just,
yeah.
what? And so, yeah, so that one's been like I said, this has been a disappointing month. No, don't get me wrong, still better than the alternative. Like, but it's like I always say, people, put your faith in Christ. Don't put your faith in men because they will eventually disappoint you and let you down. Ukraine, I pray it ends. I don't really care who's going to win. It is looking like Berlin Wall 2.0 somewhere is going to go down. I don't know where. Not it doesn't really matter where exactly. But looks like some figure of that's going to happen. In terms of Iran, I'm really disappointed that we dropped the bombs. I am happy that we got out of it, and at least for now, because like if we were like people are talking about killing the supreme leader. And it's like, if we do that, then this is our baby now. Okay. We have to do the full nation building. And golly, we know how great that and how much fun that is to do. And so
Well,
I'm
that's what
glad.
Bibi wants.
Well, yeah, of course that's what he wants. But yeah, we're no American troops on the ground for Israel, no American troops on the ground for Ukraine, no American troops on the ground for India, Pakistan, no American troops on the ground for any of it. Okay? Like that's how I look at it at this point, because the conflicts just aren't worth it. The people on both sides are both made in God's image, and we need to find a way to sue for peace, be that peace ever so base.
Well, now we're starting to see Azerbaijan also start to assert its own independence, which is interesting. A lot of people think we're going to see the breakup of the Russian Federation soon
Hmm.
because they
Uh,
don't have the ability to quash all these rebellions anymore because they've lost more than 1 million men in this war.
yeah, they're starting to use North Koreans,
Yeah,
which is weird.
exactly.
I'll never forget. Like I'll remember there was a time when you and I we were exchanging like, all right, hey Icow, is this World War III? And you're like, no, it's not World War III. I remember when the Koreans were marching across Russia. I was like, I kind of want Icow to come on the show. I was like, so Icow, does it feel
But
is it
it's
like
still not World War III.
feel
But
a little more World War III ish?
I tell you what might have gotten us closer. Did you hear that quote? There's an audio tape of it now of Trump bragging that he told Putin that he was going to bomb Moscow.
Yeah, it's like the Reagan thing. Like I've made Russia illegal. The bombs drop in 5 minutes, and
And then
people shit.
and then he said Putin then said no way, and I said way, and then he said I believe you 10%. I believe 10% that you'll do it, which is enough to whatever. He thinks that he was mind fucking him. But then he said the same thing to Xi, and Xi replied, no way, about bombing Beijing. And then he said, way. And then Xi said, I believe you 10%. Now, that would be an amazing coincidence that both of those world leaders coming from vastly different cultures both said, no
Got
way.
the same numerical figure.
Yeah. Yeah. The same number. Yeah.
And
Amazing.
the same metaphor, the same analogy, like golly, like now, you know, far be it from the Russians and the Chinese to talk about things amongst themselves before they meet up with the Americans. So,
Maybe. Yeah.
yeah,
But
they
I thought that
may
was
be
kind of
doing that.
interesting that he would. So, because, I mean, listen, your argument was that Russia can be pushed into using nuclear weapons, and if they're threatened enough, and I can't imagine being more threatened than for the American president to say that he's going to bomb Moscow with nukes.
Now, put yourself in Putin's shoes. Here's the weird thing about Trump. You don't know if he's fucking with you or not.
Well, that's
Pardon
the
my
point.
French,
Yeah.
but you don't like with Biden. You knew like we're gonna do this, and it was you could expect more of the same. With Harris, like here's the thing: why do I, despite everything that's been happening, still like I'm still glad that we got Trump in there. But again, don't put your faith in people, folks.
Well, I don't think either.
Is that like Harris? There'd be no talk of peace coming out of her mouth about anything. We'd be moving people to get into the Middle East over Israel and Ukraine, in my personal opine when it came to Harris. So I'm still quite happy that we've got somebody that's at least trying for peace, even though not doing that well in regards to bombing Iran. I mean, like, dude, George W. Bush knew he couldn't get away with that.
Well, listen, he claims that the reason he didn't invade Ukraine was because this was before, this was in his first term when this conversation took place. He says because I threatened to bomb Moscow, that's why he didn't go into Ukraine. But he knew that Biden wouldn't do shit. So because Biden is not violent enough, he's not willing to go where Trump is willing to go, and so he was scared of Trump but wasn't scared of Biden. That's Trump's argument.
And whether we like it or not, it does kind of hold weight because, like, whether we like it or not, we now know Biden wasn't really in charge.
Well, I think what we know is
It
that
was his aunt.
every red line that we were told would result in nuclear war, every single one of them, like if we start sending weapons over there, if we start allowing them to use their weapons in this use case versus that use case, if we allow them to
For 5 years.
actually invade Russia itself, all of these things, that this would cause a nuclear war, and each single time, every single time those red lines were crossed, didn't happen.
Well, us sending weapons, like regardless of rhetoric, that's not a red line. We've been sending weapons for 5 years. That's just the way that's going to. And so, for some reason, we've decided that Ukraine's the battleground for the NATO versus Russia, and it's really unfortunate that the Russian people are going to be the ones caught in it. And
Well,
like,
the line is everywhere, right? Like we wouldn't allow Russia to invade any country, and if they do, the world has to come together to stop it because otherwise you start getting invasions everywhere. Like it's starting to happen already, right? Because this idea after World War II that borders don't move,
the post-war dream.
it's
Now,
starting. Well, it worked for 80 years. It was pretty darn great,
I mean,
but
borders moved under Obama. They moved under
not
Biden.
not not the way
Like,
that they have
no,
historically.
but like, well, yeah. Who cares
Do
if they
you
haven't?
remember
Like, it's
watching
going to
those
move.
maps, like when you were
Yeah,
in high school? Those that you'd flip the page, and 5 years later, the borders and all in different places, and you just keep flipping it, and it's just like that way
Yugoslavia.
all the time. The only time that hasn't happened was the last 80 years. There have been some borders that have
I was
moved,
about
right?
to
You
say
had that,
Yugoslavia, and
huh?
that became like everybody became the sovereign republic of themselves for a little while when Yugoslavia.
Well, Yugoslavia is a little different, right? Because Yugoslavia isn't about annexing your neighbor's land, which is what I'm talking about. Yugoslavia was like an internal breakup, which that's different. But I'm talking about if I can only think of two times where, okay, three times maybe, there was the first Gulf War with Kuwait, and then the world came together and moved that border back. Then there was the taking of Crimea, and then there's before that you would have maybe Israel Gaza because those borders keep shifting. But then before that you'd have to go back to Tibet. You got to go back to the 40s. So like I if you look at a world map, it's incredibly stable over the past 80 years with occasional border like I'm talking about a country deciding that it wants its neighbor's land and taking it. Like the Sudetenland before World War II.
Well, like at one
That
point,
was
like
normal
whether
stuff.
you like a line moving or not, when it happens, the two sides are going to have to eventually sue for peace. Otherwise, everyone's going to get chewed up and killed. Like the Ukrainians, whether they like it or not, yeah, the lines on the map are going to move. I don't like it, but they're going to have to sue for peace. Otherwise, one of two things is going to happen. Either all of the young men in Ukraine are going to die and get
Mhm.
killed off, and they're going to lose their civic identity
And to
and
Russia.
their identity as. Oh, well, the Russians will still have plenty of men that can move into that area afterwards when all the like, and so they're going to lose their ethnic identity, and other people are going to
I don't
move in,
know. I
and
wouldn't.
it's
The Russian demographic problem is pretty severe. They lost 1 million men to this war, but they
not as
also
many as
lost
Russians.
another 1 million men to people fleeing Russia because they didn't want to serve in the war. So they've lost. There's a big like sort of donut hole in the middle of their population. Men, you know, in their early 20s, like gone.
Uh, yeah, we're about to run out of Russians. Let me tell you. But like that's to me. I think that's a. Don't take this the wrong way, but like I do think that's a little bit of cope. Like the Russians are just going to have the superior numbers over the Ukrainians. So in the end, the Ukrainians they will fight an obstinate fight as they will, but in the end, a larger force in the end will win out. And even Dylan, when I talked to him, he talked about how they're going to get a worse deal next year versus if they cut a deal this year. It's like, well, it sounds like you should cut a deal because either, like I said, you're going to the young men are all going to die, and then they're going to get replaced by some other population. And
But they've offered.
and the Ukrainians
But
lose
they've
their
offered.
identity, or they sacrifice a piece of their own land, and they get
But
to
they've
sit,
offered the
and they
Ukrainians.
lose a piece of their civic
But
identity. They're
yeah,
going to lose
you're
what they
talking
lose.
you're preaching to the choir because every single time they say Trump comes in and says, "Okay, let's have a deal, let's sue for peace or whatever." Zelensky says yes, and and Putin says no.
Well, like I said, what you need to do is you need to find some way to declare legal peace. However, you need to do it
Well,
by
here's the
international law.
way.
Doesn't matter what Russia says. You need to do it by international law. So at that point, you can rush Ukraine into NATO.
I'm
That's the only way
surprised
you do
you
it.
believe in international law, but that's good.
No, I'm
But
saying that's the only way that you get away with it to the point where you actually end this war where things don't
well,
push
Putin
forward.
says the way to end this war is for all of Ukraine to belong to Russia. That's the way to end the war.
Well, he's going to get about half that because that's just the way that's going to go.
He's not going to get anywhere close to half.
Yeah, like
Even
half
if
of
he
what
gets
is.
Donbass, that's maybe 20%.
But yeah, he's not going to get everything he wants. The Ukrainians aren't going to get everything they want. Eventually, they're going to stop fighting, and be that peace ever so base, at least the folks that are left in Ukraine are alive to lament the loss of territory.
I think it may end in the death of Putin.
Now, do you think it'd be an assassination attempt or him just dying of some like cause, like old age?
Yeah, I don't mean to say so. It could be either. It could be either. But what I mean is, he can't survive politically in peacetime because right now, 30% of his GDP is war-based industry. That's the only thing that's keeping the economy even close to being afloat. And the second this war ends, he can't replace that 30% of his GDP. It would be a massive, not just recession, but depression.
Build Berlin Wall 2.0.
Yeah, and you saw what he did recently. He arrested one of his big oligarchs that supports the system. So now they're starting to eat each other at this point. And I think that he needs Russia to stay at war for his economy to continue to exist. He's sort of like at this point. I hate to give this to him because I don't think he's this, but he kind of reminds me of Bismarck. When Bismarck had so many plates spinning in the 19th century in Germany that his death ultimately led to World War II, World War One, and I think here it's kind of the opposite. He's in a war. Now that he's had the whole industry propping up the economy, the last thing he can abide at this point is peace. And so he's making ridiculous demands so
I,
that he doesn't have to accept peace.
I think he needs a little more like Nate was talking about. He needs a little more territory that connects him to the ocean.
Yeah, that's what
And
he wants. He wants
then
Donbass for that reason.
And
Yeah.
then I think he would probably like whether we like it or not. Like
He,
I don't think he needs a forever war to keep his economy going because those just become a drain on the economy. I think, like I said, the baby boomer Russians, psychologically speaking,
Mhm.
that when the West is behind some wall, they consider us contained. And that's why I've held to the Berlin Wall 2.0 theory. And I think it's going to ultimately prove to be correct. Who knows where it's going to be
But
so
hold
far.
on a second. But hold on. Yeah, but this war accomplished something that NATO hasn't been able to accomplish, in 50 years, and that was it took NATO to Russia's doorstep. When Finland joined NATO, like now there's a contiguous NATO Russia border that's 3 times as long as it was before. That's what Putin accomplished.
Golly, I can't imagine why the Russians might be a wee bit paranoid about NATO.
Well, Russia did it. Russia scared Finland into it. Like Finland's position before, and
Russia made them do it.
yeah, yeah. Because here's what they said. They said, you know what? We're gonna. They've never invaded a NATO country, but if a country does not join NATO, then they get invaded. Right? That's what Ukraine proved. So Finland said, "All right, better." We've been against joining NATO this whole time because our whole identity is neutrality when it comes to this. But now we see what happens when you don't join NATO. And so now they're in NATO because Russia scared the piss out of them. And now Russia can't invade them now.
So it
Because
sounds
Russia
like
will
my
not invade it.
plan would actually work. Sounds like my
Okay.
plan would actually work if we could, by international law, declare peace, force what's left of Ukraine into NATO. That would end the war quickly. That'd be the fastest
Well,
way to
that
end
may
it.
be what will happen, but Russia
That'll
says,
be ultimately, unfortunately,
yeah, but
in
Russia says
some
they won't
form of
agree to
natural.
any deal where Ukraine joins NATO.
Well, ain't that just glory be? Then, unfortunately, once you declare some form of international peace,
I mean, did you hear Trump say the
Ukraine.
other day that he found out that uh, getting Russia, to agree to peace turned out to be a hard thing? He thought he could do it in 24 hours. Remember, day
Yeah,
one.
no, here the thing is, if he can get this war ended by the end of his second term, I'm considering that a win for Trump. I don't give a crap if it's like, oh, it needs to be within these certain hours. To me, that's sort of a child's analysis because, like, I'm not accusing you of that, but like,
Yeah, but
Trump
yeah,
said
well,
I
okay,
just
but what if
outlined,
the
like,
war is still
let's
going?
be honest, like Connor, a lot of times he just like, well, he didn't get it done in 24 hours. Fuck that guy. It's like, okay, that's just kind of an I'm angry at Trump. I don't like him, and it's sort of a cope analysis.
Yeah, or yeah, so right. So when Trump said that he could do it in 24 hours, that was a child's analysis.
No, that's the difference between taking him literally or seriously. Because you take him
No,
literally,
no,
but you
no,
don't
no,
take him
you're right. No, no,
seriously.
no.
Me, I
I
take him seriously, but I don't take him
no, no,
literally, and that's
I
the
agree
difference
with
between
you
a
that
Trump
we should
voter and
not
a
take
Trump
him
opponent.
seriously. I do not take him seriously. You're right, and it is a mistake to take him seriously. But the point is,
No, I said I take him seriously, but I don't take him literally, and that's the difference between a Trump voter and not being so. Really, I mean, like, because I don't take everything he says literally, but I do take him very seriously. You don't take him seriously, but you take everything he says quite literally, and that's why he's kind of a
well, no,
puppet.
no, no. The he takes himself literally. There were I've got it. I've got it on tape. I can send them to you. There were 5 or 6 times where reporters, after he said that he would do it on day one, they were like, "Oh, you didn't actually mean day one, right? That's just kind of a thing." No, I really am going to do it on day one. Like that's how easy it is. Like,
Was
and
this before or after he was elected?
this was before he was elected, and well, no, this was before he was elected, and after he was elected, but before he was president.
Okay, okay, so
And
you
keep
know
in
what?
mind, the first
No,
thing he
like
said
I'm
was,
gonna be honest. Like, I'm sorry, this just doesn't really do anything for me because hyperbole is okay. Every president uses hyperbole. There's no politician, major politician in America today that does not utilize hyperbole. So, I like to me, that's fine.
"All right." So, but when he says, "I'm not being hyperbolic," that's hyperbole.
You know what? Sometimes, yes, it actually can. Like, no, I'm not being sarcastic here. I'm not being sarcastic at all, Icow.
Yeah.
But yeah, yeah, no, that's totally what I mean.